The phone rang on a gray afternoon in Weston, the echo spreading through the stained glass silence of the mansion. He answered without thinking, expecting another business call, maybe a reminder from his assistant. But on the other end of the line, there wasn't an executive. There was a child, and that child was him. The fragile, trembling voice said words he knew by heart, but hadn't heard in decades. "Mommy, if you ever hear this, I want you to know that I still remember the smell of your hair when you hugged me." The billionaire dropped the phone. That phrase had been on a cassette tape buried with his mother 27 years ago. He stood still for long minutes, staring at nothing, as if time had returned to retrieve something left behind. For the first time in many years, he didn't know what to do. The call wasn't just a mystery, it was a reopened wound. And he knew that somehow the answer wasn't in his company's servers, but in the ruins of a life he had locked away in the past. His name was Adam Holloway, though almost no one called him that. To the press, he was the architect of digital silence, a tech genius who had built a billionaire fortune developing automation systems focused on privacy and security. At 38, he lived in a glass mansion on the edge of a lake in Weston, Massachusetts, a home as modern as it was cold, where not even clocks made a sound. Every morning, Adam walked the same marble hallway to his office, accompanied only by the sound of his footsteps. He had employees, of course, but never interacted with them. He communicated by message, even when they were on the same floor. He preferred isolation, absolute control over spaces and noise. He avoided parties, interviews, dinners, as if he wanted the world to forget him, even while being one of the richest men in the country. He had lost his wife to cancer 5 years earlier, and since then had never let anyone cross his emotional walls. His grief was silent, almost clinical. Like everything in his life, it was managed efficiently. What no one knew, however, was that this recent loss only reawakened a much older pain, the loss of his mother when he was just 11. A loving woman with a gentle voice who vanished as suddenly as she had existed. At the back of his house was a door that had remained locked for decades. Behind it, a small room decorated with 90s furniture, faded teddy bears, and a shelf of cassette tapes. The air inside felt still, filled with the sweet scent of old toys and suspended memories. It was the only room untouched since his childhood. Adam never entered it, but he also never allowed anyone to clean it. The room was a relic of time and of trauma. That was where he had once recorded a message to his mother, just before the funeral. The tape had been buried with her inside the casket. As the years passed, Adam became wealthier, but also more distant from himself. He had everything money could buy, except complete memories. Fragments of his childhood came in hazy dreams, often accompanied by a sense of unresolved loss. He tried to ignore it, immersing himself in algorithms and projects, but the emptiness grew silently, until the day the past decided to speak. The call happened on a Thursday at 4:13 p.m. The caller ID showed unknown number. Adam answered on speakerphone, eyes still fixed on the computer screen. But when he heard the voice on the other end, everything stopped. It was him, with the voice of an 11-year-old, saying words buried with his mother. "Mommy, I want you to know that even if no one believes it, I still remember the smell of your hair." The recording from the tape, the very one he had placed in the casket. The phone slipped from the desk. He stood motionless. He ran through all technical possibilities: hacking, voice simulation, system error. But the original recording was on a cassette tape, buried 27 years ago. He had never digitized it. There was no way anyone could access it. A silent panic set in. For the first time since his wife's funeral, Adam felt something he couldn't name. In the following days, he plunged into an obsessive search. He recovered images from his mother's burial, located the cemetery records. Everything indicated the grave was intact, the tapes still there. But one detail caught his attention: The death records were incomplete. There was a certificate, but no medical signature. No official photo of the casket being sealed. Everything seemed too vague for such a significant event. Determined to uncover the truth behind the call, Adam returned to the town where he grew up for the first time in decades. His childhood home was up for sale, in ruins. He visited the church where the funeral had been held, spoke with the local priest, a young man who didn't know him, but gave him the name of an elderly woman who had worked cleaning the parish since the 1980s. She remembered him, said that at the time of the funeral, the boy seemed confused, as if he didn't quite understand what was happening. And she let slip a name Adam hadn't heard since he was a child, St. Margaret's Home, an orphanage where he had supposedly stayed for a time while the family situation was resolved. He had no memory of that. Or maybe he had erased it. He returned to the hotel with his mind in turmoil. He spent the night trying to recall anything that could confirm that stay. The room felt smaller, as if the walls also held echoes of a childhood he barely knew he had lived. Slowly, blurry images surfaced. A courtyard with trees, a woman in a white coat, children seated in rows. Nothing very clear, but there was something, a feeling, he could no longer ignore. Maybe his mother had never died that day. Maybe the truth was somewhere he had been trained to forget. The next day, he drove to the indicated location. The orphanage was shut, windows boarded up, the garden overrun with dry leaves. But when he knocked on the door of the neighboring house, an old man opened it, surprised. He recognized him immediately. "You're the boy from the tape, aren't you?" he said. In that instant, Adam knew the past hadn't ended. It had only been waiting to be reopened.
The man next door was Thomas Greaves, a former caretaker of the orphanage. His eyes now dulled with age, but his memory surprisingly sharp. He took Adam to a small garage where he stored boxes of memorabilia from the institution. Among old photographs and yellowed papers, he pulled out a smaller box, labeled in childish handwriting, Adam H. Inside, among old toys and a sketchbook, there it was, the original cassette tape, with the light blue cover he had colored with crayons. The very one he believed had been buried with his mother. Thomas explained that on the day of the funeral, the mother's family had received medical advice not to take Adam to the hospital. Instead, they told the boy that his mother had died and placed him in the orphanage until someone could care for him. But the mother wasn't dead. She had suffered a severe psychological breakdown, the result of years of abandonment and emotional pressure. She was committed to a psychiatric clinic by force and kept away from her son by decision of her maternal grandparents, who feared social stigma. To protect the child, they created a lie, a symbolic death. The tape never made it to the casket. It was confiscated by doctors and handed to the orphanage, and since then it had remained there, untouched. Still stunned by the revelation, Adam asked Thomas why no one had ever told him the truth. The answer was simple and painful. Because no one thought you'd come back. But there was more. Recently, Thomas had received a call from a young nurse at a rural nursing home who had found a woman who obsessively repeated phrases from an old recording. When he heard the content, he recognized the voice of the boy once left in his care. Without hesitation, Adam drove to the given address. The nursing home was modest, hidden among hills, and in room number 12, he found a silver-haired woman sitting in a floral armchair. She held a cassette tape in her hands and looked at him as if she didn't see him. But she whispered softly, "Do you still remember the smell of my hair?" The same phrase from the recording, the same voice he had heard on the call. The world seemed to pause for a second, as if holding its breath. His mother was alive, with advanced Alzheimer's, but alive. She had listened to that tape hundreds of times over the years, a ritual that kept her connected to her son. The young nurse, moved, had used an old recorder to play the tape over the phone, trying to alert whoever was the boy in the voice. And unknowingly, he had reunited two lives broken by silence. Adam didn't know what to say. For the first time, words weren't necessary.
In the days that followed, Adam began visiting the nursing home every afternoon. He brought flowers, fruits, new tapes. His mother rarely recognized him, but sometimes smiled when she heard his voice. On one of those visits, he entered the room with a portable tape player and played the recording. The woman closed her eyes, moved, and murmured, "He still remembers." She said nothing more, but for Adam, that was enough. The tape, once an echo of goodbye, became a bridge to reunion. And by listening to that child recorded 27 years ago, Adam began to understand himself with more compassion. He discovered he was not only the billionaire who outpaced time with algorithms, but also the boy who endured absence with tenderness. A being divided between imposed silence and unforgettable love. With part of his fortune, Adam bought the old orphanage and turned the building into a support center for children separated from their parents due to clinical or legal reasons. He wanted no child to grow up believing absent love was dead love. He didn't announce the initiative publicly. He didn't want his name on plaques. He just wanted it to exist and to heal as he was healing. The house in Weston remained, but now lights turned on in more than one room. Adam donated half of his wealth and began living with less, but with more. He started writing letters, not emails, but handwritten letters, to old colleagues, to people he had hurt, to himself. And he stored them in a box called Things I Can Now Feel. One autumn afternoon, holding his mother's hand in the nursing home garden, she turned to him and asked, "Do you still remember the smell of my hair?" It was the second time she had said it, but now he didn't freeze. He caressed her hair and replied, eyes brimming with tears, "I do, and I'll never forget it." It wasn't a miracle, it was reconciliation. And sometimes, that's enough. Some stories don't ask for answers, only to be heard. And perhaps, somewhere inside us, there's also an old tape waiting to be played. If this story stirred something in you, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. That way, you can continue walking with us through stories that speak to the heart. The next one is already on the way, and it might be just the one you needed to hear today.